Nuremberg, November 1946. 21 men sit in the dock, the surviving architects of the Third Reich. Göring, Ribbentrop, Hess, Speer. The charges: conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, crimes against humanity. 20 of those men are convicted. One walks free. His name is Hjalmar Schacht. He is not a general. He is not a party ideologue. He is a banker. And the prosecution's argument, argued before the world in an international court on the record, is that without this man's financial engineering, Adolf Hitler could not have built an army. Not the propaganda, not the politics, the army, the planes, the tanks, the submarines. The question the court couldn't fully answer, and that history still hasn't settled, is this: was Hjalmar Schacht a criminal who served Hitler, or a financier who was used by Hitler, or something far more disturbing than either? Before this is over, you'll have to decide for yourself, because the paper trail is real, and where it leads is extraordinary. Here is what the history books usually tell you about how Hitler built his military. He came to power in January 1933. He began secretly rearming Germany in violation of the Treaty of Versailles. By 1939, he had the most modern army on the continent. What the history books usually skip is the mechanism. Germany in 1933 was functionally broke. The treasury held almost no foreign currency reserves. The Reichsbank, Germany's central bank, was technically insolvent. Unemployment stood above 6 million. The economy had been shattered first by WWI reparations, then by the Great Depression. You cannot build 4,000 tanks and 2,000 aircraft on an empty treasury. You need money. Specifically, you need a system to create money that doesn't officially exist, that doesn't appear on any government budget, that doesn't trigger the international alarm bells that would bring France and Britain and the United States down on Germany before rearmament is complete. That system had a name. It was called the MEFO Bill, and the man who invented it, who built the entire secret financial architecture of Nazi rearmament, was sitting in that Nuremberg dock. Hjalmar Horace Greeley Schacht, born 1877, career central banker, one of the most technically gifted financial minds of the 20th century, and one of the most dangerous. But Schacht's story doesn't begin with Hitler. It begins 20 years earlier with a different disaster, and with a river of American money that flowed into Germany and rebuilt it from the ground up. And the question you need to hold in your mind as this story unfolds is this: if American banks hadn't rebuilt Germany in the 1920s, if Wall Street hadn't decided that a recovering Germany was a profitable Germany, would there have been anything left for Hitler to militarize? That question has no clean answer, but the paper trail is real. The loan documents still exist. The bond prospectuses still exist. The congressional testimony still exists. What we're about to walk through isn't conspiracy, it's receipts. June 28, 1919, Versailles. The peace treaty ending the First World War imposes on Germany one of the most punishing financial settlements in modern history. War guilt clause, full responsibility for the conflict, and a reparations bill initially set at 132 billion gold marks, roughly equivalent to $33 billion in 1921, an almost incomprehensible number. For context, Germany's entire pre-war GDP for a full year was around 50 billion marks. The math was impossible from day one. Everyone in the room knew it was impossible. John Maynard Keynes, attending the conference as part of the British delegation, resigned in protest, went home, and wrote the economic consequences of the peace, warning that these terms would destabilize Europe and produce exactly the kind of political extremism that was now arriving. He was right. He published that warning in 1919. Hitler became chancellor 14 years later. By 1921, Germany is already defaulting on timber and coal deliveries. By 1923, French and Belgian troops occupy the Ruhr industrial region to extract payments by force. Germany responds with passive resistance, workers go on strike, and the government prints money to pay them. What happens next is one of the most catastrophic monetary events in recorded history. The German mark collapses, completely. In January 1923, $1 buys roughly 18,000 marks. By November 1923, 10 months later, $1 buys 4.2 trillion marks. People burn currency for heat because it's cheaper than firewood. A wheelbarrow of cash buys a loaf of bread. Workers are paid twice a day so they can spend wages before they lose value by afternoon. Life savings, built over decades, become worthless in weeks. This is the environment that creates Hjalmar Schacht's first moment of power. In November 1923, the month Hitler attempts his failed beer hall putsch in Munich, the German government appoints Schacht as currency commissioner and then president of the Reichsbank. His job? Stop the hyperinflation. He does it brilliantly. He introduces the Rentenmark, a new currency backed not by gold, but by a mortgage on all German agricultural land and industrial property. It's a financial fiction. Land cannot actually back a currency the way gold can. But it is a credible fiction, and credibility is what currencies run on. The inflation stops within weeks. Schacht becomes the most celebrated economist in Germany. He is consulted by foreign governments. He travels to the United States and meets with the president of the Federal Reserve. He is, by any measure, a figure of the international financial establishment. He also begins meeting with a very different kind of German politician. The year is 1924. The hyperinflation has been stopped, but Germany is still technically unable to pay its reparations, and the international community knows that a Germany that can't pay will become a Germany that destabilizes Europe. The solution comes from an unlikely direction. Charles G. Dawes, American banker, former director of the Bureau of the Budget, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, chairs an international committee tasked with restructuring German reparations into manageable payments. The Dawes Plan is adopted in August 1924. It does two things. First, it reduces and reschedules Germany's annual reparations payments to a level that might actually be achievable. Second, and this is the part that matters, it organizes an international loan to give Germany the foreign currency reserves to begin making those payments. That loan? 200 million gold marks, approximately 110 million US dollars. The primary organizer of the American portion of that loan is J.P. Morgan and Company. The loan is enormously oversubscribed. American investors are hungry for it. German bonds pay higher yields than domestic American securities, and Germany, now with a stabilized currency and the backing of an international plan, looks like a sound investment. Between 1924 and 1929, private American investment pours into Germany. The total is staggering. Historians estimate that American banks and private investors lend Germany approximately $1.5 billion in this 5-year window, through bonds underwritten by firms including Dillon, Reed & Company, Goldman Sachs, and others. That money rebuilds Germany's industrial infrastructure, steel plants, chemical factories, electrical systems, transportation networks. It is, by any measure, one of the most successful economic recoveries in modern history. It is also, without anyone intending it, the construction of an industrial base that will, a decade later, be converted to war production. The Opel automobile factory, rebuilt with foreign capital in the 1920s, begins producing military trucks in 1935. General Motors owns Opel. They continue receiving dividends from German operations until the U.S. enters the war in 1941. The chemical combine IG Farben, the largest corporation in Germany and one of the largest in the world, receives American investment throughout this period. Standard Oil of New Jersey, controlled by the Rockefeller family, has a joint research agreement with IG Farben dating from 1929, covering synthetic fuel and rubber technology. IG Farben will later produce Zyklon B. None of this is hidden. None of it is secret. It's in the corporate filings. It's in the congressional testimony from the 1930s and 1940s. It's in the records of the Nuremberg Trials of industrialists, which ran separately from the main Nuremberg proceedings. The system that rebuilt Germany, with American money in the 1920s, is the same system that Hitler inherits in 1933. And the man who understands that system better than anyone alive is Hjalmar Schacht. By 1930, Hjalmar Schacht has resigned from the Reichsbank in protest over the Young Plan. He is now a private citizen. He is also, increasingly, a nationalist. The Great Depression hits Germany like a second catastrophe. Unemployment surges back above 6 million. The Weimar democracy is fracturing. In late 1930, Schacht meets Adolf Hitler for the first time at a private dinner. He later writes that he was confident he could manage Hitler's economic instincts and steer them productively. Several very intelligent men believe this about Hitler in this period. It does not age well for any of them. In January 1932, Schacht helps organize a meeting between Hitler and leading German industrialists at the home of steel magnate Fritz Thyssen. The purpose? Convince the business community that Hitler is a manageable alternative to communist revolution. Checks are subsequently written to the Nazi Party. Thyssen himself documents this in his 1941 memoir, I Paid Hitler. Schacht is not acting out of ideology. He is acting out of calculation, that stability requires a strong government, and the Nazis are preferable to the communists. It is the logic of a man who believes he can be inside the machine without becoming part of what the machine does. On January 30th, 1933, Hitler is appointed chancellor. Within days, Schacht is appointed president of the Reichsbank. He does not hesitate. Here is the problem Hitler hands Schacht in 1933. Germany must rearm, now. But the treasury is empty. The Versailles Treaty prohibits military buildup, and the international community is watching German finances. If government expenditure suddenly spikes, foreign creditors ask questions. The rearmament program gets exposed before it can protect itself. Germany needs to spend money it doesn't officially have, on weapons it's not officially building, without any of it appearing in official accounts. This is not a political problem. It is an accounting problem, and Schacht treats it like one. He creates a shell company, Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft, MBH, MEFO, the Metal Research Corporation. Its nominal shareholders are four arms manufacturers, Krupp, Siemens, Gute Hoffnungshütte, and Rheinmetall. It produces nothing. It exists on paper for one purpose. When the government pays an arms manufacturer, it doesn't write a check. It issues a MEFO bill, a promissory note formally issued by this private shell company. The manufacturer accepts it. Banks trade it as a financial instrument. It carries full government backing. It appears nowhere on the official budget. Between 1934 and 1938, the Reich issues 12 billion Reichmarks in MEFO bills. Germany's entire official defense budget in 1934 is approximately 4 billion marks. The MEFO system allows real rearmament spending to run nearly 3 times the declared figure, while the declared figure itself already violates Versailles. The Luftwaffe, the Panzer divisions, the submarine fleet, built with money that didn't officially exist through a mechanism designed in a banker's office. British economists analyzing German finances in the late 1930s simply cannot make the numbers work. Germany is spending more than its revenues allow. No one outside the inner circle knows why. Now you know why. By 1938, the MEFO bills are coming due and the Reichsbank is struggling. Schacht writes Hitler a memo warning that continued deficit spending risks destroying the currency. Hitler's response is to dismiss him. Schacht later argues this proves he was never truly on Hitler's side. The Nuremberg prosecution argues he objected only when the machine threatened the financial stability he cared about, not out of moral opposition to the program itself. Both, in a sense, are correct. While Schacht builds his invisible budget inside Germany, something equally extraordinary is happening in Basel, Switzerland. The Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, was founded in 1930 to manage German reparations. It is the central bank of central banks, a Swiss institution whose members include the central banks of Germany, France, Britain, Italy, Belgium, and the United States. During the war years, its board includes representatives from nations actively fighting each other. The governor of the Bank of England from 1920 to 1944 is Montague Norman, eccentric, secretive, and a personal friend of Schacht since the 1920s. Both men share a conviction that central banking must remain above politics. In March 1939, Germany occupies Czechoslovakia. The National Bank of Czechoslovakia holds gold reserves of approximately 23 million pounds sterling, a large portion of it held at the BIS in Basel. Within weeks, Nazi-installed directors of the former Czech Central Bank instruct the BIS to transfer that gold to the German Reichsbank. The BIS complies. The Bank of England, which processes some of these transactions, is informed. Montague Norman authorizes the transfer. When journalist Paul Einzig breaks the story in the Financial News in May 1939, there is outrage in Parliament. The Chancellor of the Exchequer confirms the transfer occurred, confirms the Bank of England knew, claims there was no legal mechanism to stop it. 6 million pounds of Czech gold to Nazi Germany, 5 months before the invasion of Poland. The BIS continues operating throughout the entire war, processing gold transactions on behalf of Nazi Germany, some of it looted from occupied nations. A 1997 independent report commissioned by the BIS itself confirms this. The BIS issued a formal acknowledgement. It still exists, still headquartered in Basel, still serves as the central bank of central banks. September 1st, 1939. Germany invades Poland with an army funded and equipped through the system Hjalmar Schacht built. Schacht holds the title of Minister without portfolio, ceremonial, powerless. Hitler keeps him nearby, perhaps for credibility, perhaps as a placeholder. In 1940, he makes contact with German resistance figures and passes messages to the Allies, suggesting that moderate Germans might negotiate peace if Hitler is removed. The British do not take these approaches seriously. After the failed July 20th, 1944 assassination attempt on Hitler, the Gestapo casts a wide net. Schacht is arrested, not for direct involvement, but for his resistance contacts. He passes through several concentration camps, held in officer-grade conditions. American troops liberate him at Flossenburg in April 1945. He is immediately rearrested. By the Americans this time. He is going to Nuremberg. The International Military Tribunal opens in November 1945. Schacht faces 2 counts: conspiracy to wage aggressive war and crimes against peace. The prosecution's case: he funded the Nazi Party before it took power, reorganized the Reichsbank as an instrument of the Nazi state, invented the MEFO system that secretly financed rearmament, and served in Hitler's government for 6 years. The defense's case: he resigned from the economics ministry in 1937, was dismissed from the Reichsbank in 1939, had no foreknowledge of the Holocaust, made contact with resistance figures, and was himself imprisoned by the regime. On October 1st, 1946, the judgment. Schacht is acquitted. The tribunal's reasoning: the prosecution had not proven he specifically intended to facilitate aggressive war rather than national defense. His early departures from office, combined with resistance contacts, created sufficient doubt. The Soviet judge files a formal dissent, arguing the acquittal is a miscarriage of justice. The reaction in the courtroom is, by all accounts, stunned. A German denazification court subsequently convicts him and sentences him to 8 years of hard labor. He appeals. The sentence is overturned in 1948. Schacht is 71 years old. He does what he has always done. He goes back to banking. In 1953, he founds a private bank in Dusseldorf and becomes a financial consultant to developing nations across Africa and Asia. He writes his memoirs. He maintains consistently that he served Germany, not Nazism. He dies on January 3, 1970, age 92. There is a version of this story in which Hjalmar Schacht is a villain. He built the system that armed Hitler's Germany. He organized the meetings. He invented the instrument. He served in the government. There is a version in which he is a cautionary tale about the failure of believing you can serve a system without becoming responsible for what it does. Both are real. They are not mutually exclusive. But what's harder to account for is the rest of it. The $1.5 billion in American loans that rebuilt German industry in the 1920s, that was not sinister intent. It was capital following yield. The firms involved were not arming Hitler. They were financing recovery. The fact that recovered industry became rearmed industry happened over a decade through decisions made by other men. The Bank of England's transfer of Czech gold in 1939, That was a man following institutional procedure while telling himself that institutions must remain above politics. The BIS, processing Axis gold while Allied soldiers died. That was an institution designed to be permanent, to outlast any individual conflict. These are not excuses. They are something more troubling than excuses. They are the logic of systems, financial, institutional, bureaucratic, that continue functioning after the moral case for stopping them has become overwhelming. That logic didn't die at Nuremberg. The BIS is still in Basel. The banks are still in business. And the question Nuremberg left unanswered, at what point does financing a catastrophe make you responsible for it, is one that every financial crisis, every defense contract, every sovereign debt negotiation since 1946 has quietly refused to answer. Schacht knew the answer. He just never said it out loud. And the court never made him.